Hello and welcome to Inside Edition Examines Alcatraz. It's the most notorious prison in the United States. Located in the frigid and treacherous San Francisco Bay, Alcatraz was said to be the prison nobody could escape from. But whether or not that's true is up for debate. Inside Edition took a closer look at the prison known as The Rock.
For 3 years, this was home for William Baker. It wasn't for work or to sightsee like these folks. No, Baker was a prisoner on Alcatraz.
I came to Alcatraz for escaping from other prisons. That's what I came here for. They didn't especially love me all that much back then. My original charge was car theft. I just needed a car real quick and to make a getaway from something I was doing. We showered twice a week, whether we needed it or not.
The ex-con comes back every year to The Rock to revisit his past.
The rules were very strict here. You were locked in your cell most of the time. There was no freedom of movement whatsoever.
To pass the time, Baker learned a new skill.
Well, I became a better criminal here. I learned how to do counterfeit payroll checks, and that's what I did when I got out.
The Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, now a national park, was open for nearly 30 years, from 1934 to 1963. It housed some of the country's most notorious criminals, including Al Capone. But it was also where the prison guards and their families called home.
There's the rich history and just breathing the air and revisiting everything. Feels like home. I have pictures of myself at the playground.
It's really funny, growing up, my parents always told me that I was born in Alcatraz. And I said, Mom, there's no way.
Many who used to live on the island reunite once a year to swap stories.
I had the unique experience of being allowed to go up to the spot last year where he is standing and get my picture taken up there. So my biggest regret is that I didn't come with my dad here for a reunion.
This is Easter 1951. I grew up for 2 years on the island. I was very young.
Betty Stone was 5 years old when her father was a prison guard.
It's my sister, myself, and my brother. My dad told me that I would stand on the balcony there at 64 building when they had convict groups that were working down unloading stuff. And I would yell down to the guards about how they were lazy because they weren't helping.
She returns to Alcatraz to pass down memories to her granddaughter.
This is sharing our heritage and the history. This is a unique place. I want her to be able to share that.
Can we sing happy birthday to George DiVincenzi, everybody?
Others share celebrations when they're together.
Happy birthday to you.
George DiVincenzi is 96 years old.
Yeah, give it up for George!
This former prison guard witnessed a double murder on the job.
2 inmates killed each other, and I was right in the middle of it on my first day, my first assignment, and my first hour. I got my leg cut 10 inches long.
He's been coming to the reunion since 1972.
It's very repetitious, but I enjoy it. See all the ex-employees I used to work with, but there's only a few left.
My name is Jim Albright. I was here for 4 years. I was the last guard out, and I escorted the last inmate off the island.
Hanging in there the best I can.
Yeah,
you know.
I knew.
Some alumni of Alcatraz have become dear friends.
This guy, he did time just like me, sort of. If you stop and think about it, you know, he did many, many hours. Sitting in a chair, sitting up in the tower, thinking about things.
My name is William Rudder. My father was a correction officer on Alcatraz, and his name was William Rudder.
William Rudder lived on Alcatraz for 6 years.
I love coming out to the island. I love to share my experience with people. And one day I brought my father out here, and that was the first time we were on the island together in 38 years.
Many people always ask, what was it like living here?
And my response to them is, what's it like living in your neighborhood? This is all I knew.
I was a very young 24 when I arrived at Alcatraz the first time.
For 89-year-old Joan, returning to the Rock can be overwhelming. She brought a photo of her late husband, so he's with her in spirit as she takes it all in.
We had no idea that there was even an alumni until a few years ago, but it was always a good topic of conversation to say, oh, you know, when I lived on Alcatraz, and people would say, you did what?
Only later in life did it seem remarkable growing up on Alcatraz.
I have to think back of how different life was in so many areas, and how really it was such an experience that I should have paid more attention while I was here, had I known it was going to be so important later.
This may be the last year the Alcatraz alumni meet on the island.
It rekindles memories, rekindles friendships.
Steve Mahoney cherishes the reunions as he thinks back to his childhood on the island.
We can bring some of that to life by saying we were there. We did this. And I actually have a picture.
Earlier this year, he shared his memories with InsideEdition.com and all these keepsakes he's collected over the years.
These are actually labeled as having been from Alcatraz, and it clearly is possibly one of the only ones in existence that actually has Alcatraz on it.
But as time goes by, the number of folks who can speak on the prison's history firsthand has dwindled.
The guards and the convicts are aging and passing away. And so today we have one convict and two guards, and one wife of a guard. The rest of everyone else are the children of Alcatraz and their extended families who weren't even on the island.
As for William Baker, he made a career out of creating fake checks, the skill he learned on Alcatraz.
Got caught and got caught again and again, but I became better at it each time, sort of trial and error type thing. The problem was the cops got better too, you know what I mean?
Once he finally was out of jail in 2011, he wrote a book about it.
I retired when I was 78 years old. I quit being a criminal at that time. I just got old, you know. So I wrote a book and I sent a copy out here to the head ranger, and he sent me a plane ticket. So here I am.
Alcatraz is still open to the public to visit 362 days a year.
60 years ago this month, 3 inmates pulled off the impossible. They broke out of the escape-proof Alcatraz federal prison. Now, age-progressed images of the convicted bank robbers released today could crack wide open the puzzling mystery. Did the men survive? And if so, where did they go? And are they still alive?
We don't know if one or more of these people are alive, so basically you're giving the public 3 different people to be on the lookout for.
Yeah, basically, if anybody sees any of these guys look just like this, they should be able to call in.
I may have found a way out of here.
The daring prison break inspired the 1979 Clint Eastwood movie Escape from Alcatraz, which depicts how the escapees made papier-mâché heads with human hair to trick guards into believing they were sleeping in their cells. It's believed they slipped away on a raft made of raincoats.
They were able to, for several months, hide everything they were doing, including making a little workshop on top of the 3rd tier of the cell house, and manufacturing a raft and life vests and tools and paddles and stuff that they needed to escape.
The FBI declared the men most likely drowned in the frigid waters of the San Francisco Bay. But the case was reopened in 2013 after this letter was received. My name is John Angland. I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962 with my brother Clarence and Frank Morris. I'm 83 years old and in bad shape. I have cancer. Yes, we all made it that night, but barely. In the letter, he offers to surrender in return for medical treatment. Could this 1975 photo offer further proof that John Angland and his brother Clarence survived? Ken Windner is the nephew of the 2 brothers who escaped. He told Inside Edition that this photo mailed to his family shows the brothers living in Brazil as farmers. A side-by-side comparison bears a striking resemblance to the escaped convicts. The nephew wondered if his uncles married and had children in Brazil.
We really kind of hope to meet either my aunts or my cousins. We hope to sit down with them and hear some of the stories about my uncles.
If they are alive today, John Angland would be 92, Clarence would be 91. But retired U.S. Marshal Michael Dyke is skeptical.
I looked at every single clue that was called in during my time as investigator. I worked on the case for like 16 years. I was able to discount pretty much every clue that was called in.
Coming up, we'll hear more from the family of escaped Alcatraz prisoners and why they believe the two survived.
Alcatraz was supposed to be the prison no one could escape from. So when 3 inmates did just that in 1962, it was a tremendous embarrassment to federal authorities.
3 bank robbers disappeared from Alcatraz prison.
For decades, the official line was that the men had drowned. But did they really?
The possibility of them still being alive is very good.
Ken Widener is the nephew of 2 of the escapees, brothers John and Clarence Anglin. He believes his bank robber uncles made it across the San Francisco Bay and ended up living in Brazil, where they became farmers. He believes this is the photo that proves it.
I may have found a way out of here.
The daring escape inspired the 1979 movie Escape from Alcatraz, starring Clint Eastwood. Just like in the movie, the escapees made papier-mâché heads to trick guards into believing they were sleeping in their cells.
Damn it, Morris, I said get up!
Widener broke his silence in the documentary Alcatraz Search for the Truth on History. He says he believes his 2 uncles, along with fellow prisoner Frank Morris, had a very detailed plan and left nothing to chance.
They didn't get down to the water and go, okay, what do we do now? They already had it in their mind what they were going to do.
So could this 1975 photo that was delivered to the family by a friend of the brothers really be them? We asked former U.S. Marshal Arthur Roderick why he thinks it's the real thing.
When the forensic artists actually took out the facial shots and isolated them by themselves, and you put the mug shots right next to them, it's clearly evident, especially with John Anglin, the forehead, the hairline, the ear, the earlobes, the area around the nose. All that is almost perfectly similar.
Widener says his uncles kept sending their mom Christmas cards long after they escaped Alcatraz. If they are alive today, John would be 85, Clarence would be 84. The family believes the brothers would have married and had children in Brazil.
We really kind of hope to meet either my aunts or my cousins. We hope to sit down with them and hear some of the stories about my uncles.
53 years later, could one of the great mysteries of Alcatraz finally be solved?
Here's something surprising. Did you know that children lived and grew up on Alcatraz? It's true, and we heard their stories.
The convicts who were there, they'd been troublemakers.
Everybody wanted to see Al Capone.
Alcatraz was an iconic image.
A prison in the middle of San Francisco Bay was a great place to live. It was a great place to grow up. I have not met a single kid that grew up there that doesn't appreciate the fact that he was there.
As kids, it was a phenomenal place to be.
It was just home. We didn't lock our doors. We had great Halloweens. We had Christmas parties.
It was a very special time for all of us.
But the most powerful thing was Hollywood.
I may have found a way out of here.
And they created what I think is the mystique of Alcatraz.
No one has ever escaped from Alcatraz.
I'm in.
My parents were on the island from 1956 till after the facility closed in 1963. We started our life in what was called Building 64. Our apartment was right here. If you look on the top floor, just barely above my finger, that's part of the windows that we had. $18 a month was what the rent was, and we did actually have multi-million-dollar views. Were we afraid? No, we weren't afraid. We didn't know any different. It was almost like being on a small island in Hawaii. They talked about, well, the kids weren't allowed to have guns. I distinctly remember having a toy rifle and toy pistol, and I actually have a picture even with a toy cannon. It was a great picture of my dad and mom and 2 brothers and me. It was fun for me. You know, we grew up living on prison reservations. For us as small children, though, there were in fact some minor protections. One of them is we had small dog tags that identified us by name as being part of Alcatraz Island, with the idea being that if you told someone you were from Alcatraz Island, like a police officer, they probably wouldn't believe you. So we had those dog tags with us at that time.
My father was transferred to Alcatraz. They did want staff to live there. 60 families, 100 kids. At that time, I was about 4 months old. So that's my first encounter with Alcatraz. As boys, we used to explore everywhere around the island. None of my friends, nor did I experience any kind of fear in relation to the inmates. It was pretty common knowledge among the parents, of course, that we were in a situation that could be dangerous. As a kid, you tried to get to where you shouldn't be, of course. We weren't as smart as we thought we were because I had a chance to go up into the top of the dock tower, and those guards saw us. They just didn't get excited because you could see everything.
These are actually labeled as having been from Alcatraz, and it clearly is possibly one of the only ones in existence that actually has Alcatraz on it. We were not supposed to speak to the convicts. On rare occasion, we would have contact with them. They were not looking to get in trouble at all. They would just talk to us and just have a bit of a conversation. With it being with a little kid and a convict, it didn't last all that long. We were not afraid of them, and I never felt a fear of convicts in any of the prisons.
Inmates used to pick up our white goods, like in the military, and do sheets and towels and things, and I used to help them load the trucks with the garbage. And that's about the only interplay I had with them.
Alcatraz, still escape-proof after one of the most desperate attempted prison breaks on record.
When my father went back to work there in 1945, he of course was there during this infamous escape where inmates got a hold of guns, which was considered to be impossible.
5 men, including 2 guards, are dead. 14 are wounded.
The island was on fire. In the middle of the night, there was lights, explosions, things going on.
Inside, armed and deadly dangerous, the desperate men were trapped.
He stayed 3 days and 2 nights in that area below the kitchen with 18 inmates. He was lucky to survive.
Very few people see this view anymore. We actually have 3 watercolors that were done by one convict that were given to my dad that are watercolors of Alcatraz. You've got down here the signature. And you can easily tell that it was from a convict's viewpoint. We've read through his story and everything, which is a fascinating story of the things he did that caused him to get into prison and to get into Alcatraz. It brings it alive. They had their weapons available to them. I can tell you for a fact those have never been seen or been on the news in any fashion in the past.
Very first time I did go to the island, it was dramatic because the federal government had knocked the buildings down that I lived in. It was a blow to the chest.
But then they tore these buildings down. And
so I just got to a point where I just tell stories. I was living in those cottages. He was living in the 64 building, and try to pass on that the island was a very special place to live, but it wasn't mystical like Hollywood has it. Everybody that goes by this now cannot see what I can see, that this was a special place for those people that lived here. I was a very lucky person to have been able to live on that island and have those experiences.
The kids on the island had a unique upbringing. In most cases, probably didn't recognize how unique their upbringing was until years later, because it was just life.
One of the reasons the island was closed down was because of the cost. We dumped all our sewage in the bay. We dumped our garbage in the bay. And so it would be very, very difficult to live on that rock today, even if you could.
I know there have been a couple of different suggestions of, well, gee, why don't you take the area of the island where the apartments were and turn them into bed and breakfasts, which I think there's zero chance of ever happening. I don't think that's actually in the island's best interest. But boy, if I had the opportunity to live there, I sure would.
Coming up, the personal items of one of the most notorious prisoners kept at Alcatraz go up for sale. We'll show you. Welcome back. Notorious gangster Al Capone was sent to Alcatraz in 1934. As his family aged, they decided to sell off some of his prized possessions. Watch. Al Capone, reputed gangster, but also grandpa?
He's Papa. He's a very loving, grandfatherly figure. He was somebody who played with us in the garden. He's somebody who would throw us up in the air and was very affectionate.
Capone's granddaughters are now auctioning off his belongings, which they say have never left the family's possession after his death in 1947.
My sisters and I are getting older. We didn't want these things to be left, and people who wouldn't know what they were, what the story behind each of them is. We didn't want to leave them for someone else to have to deal with.
If the price is right, you could snag some of his everyday items that were embellished to his liking.
This little piece is really cute too. It's platinum and in diamonds. It's an AC, and it was a match case. Papa smoked cigars all the time.
If diamonds aren't your thing, you could also bid on Al Capone's favorite firearm.
Well, Papa many, many times had to be prepared to protect himself. That was his number one gun for protection as far as he was concerned. And I know he referred to that as his sweetheart. She was watching out for him.
No matter how you look at Capone's legacy as a businessman, the items on offer could give you a glimpse of the man beyond the headlines.
When you handle his possessions, you get a sense of who a person is, and you see his artifacts, you see his pictures, you see him holding his grandchildren, you see the letters to his son, and you see, regardless of how he made his living and what his profession was, you see the human side of him.
Witherell's Auction House presents A Century of Notoriety, The Estate of Al Capone in Sacramento in October. Al Capone was eventually released from Alcatraz in 1939 after years of declining health from syphilis. Coming up, we'll take you to another famous prison. This one you'll know from an Oscar-winning movie.
It's a spooky look inside one of America's most historic prisons, the Ohio State Reformatory. The paint is peeling, there are cobwebs everywhere, and rusty cell bars. If it looks familiar, there's good reason. The abandoned prison is where The Shawshank Redemption was filmed more than 20 years ago. The prison opened in 1896 and closed its doors in 1990. Some of Ohio's most dangerous criminals were held there. Prison historian Scott Sukol.
Rapists, murderers, child molesters, you name it.
The prison made for a perfect backdrop for Shawshank. Here's the parole boardroom where Morgan Freeman's character is denied parole in the movie. And check out these tunnels. They were made especially for the movie's classic scene where Tim Robbins' character made his escape.
They had it filled with a mixture of chocolate syrup, candy bars, crackers, and leaves to give it that sewer feel. For the first 3 or 4 years that we were open for tours, this tunnel still smelled like chocolate.
The prison shower room was used in the movie, and this office is where Tim Robbins encountered the warden.
You enjoy working in the laundry?
No, sir, not especially.
It looks like time has stood still in this prison, forever immortalized in The Shawshank Redemption.
From Shawshank to Alcatraz, we love a good story. Thanks for watching Inside Edition Examines Alcatraz. Stick with the stream for more amazing stories from Inside Edition.